Anime has become a medium that has touched millions of people's hearts throughout the world. From a shonen like Attack on Titan, to a simple tale like Violet Evergarden, to maybe even some shows about some girls in a band. Everyone has that one anime that has affected their life in some way. Whether it teaches them some kind of important lesson, or helps them realize that they need to change, we all in the anime community have that one special show we treasure that has forever changed our world. I found that show that I treasure like no other in June of 2020. Today, I'll be talking about how my life fell to pieces, and how Steins Gate saved my life. To understand the impact Steins Gate had on me, we're going to need to take a deep dive into my life. My backstory, if that's what you want to call it, is going to be a little long, and it will be very personal, but I promise it is all necessary for the analysis of Steins Gate I'm going to do later. I apologize in advance though if this video gets weird at all, as this is my first time talking about a lot of these things in length. High school was not easy. For most people, 9th grade is their worst year, but for me, actually, it was my best. I started at a new school without my best friends from middle school, but I figured things would be okay. And, you know, at first, they were alright. 9th grade was a lot of fun. I became good friends with a lot of the teachers on campus, surprisingly, because the school was very small. And I just fell in love with every aspect of going to that campus. I acted really goofy, and this was when I started a new YouTube channel called Blazewalker.
Go. Please go. No! Did you die?
So I donned that as my personality at school almost. I would refer to myself as a crazy blonde guy that screamed and joked all the time. And that sort of became my persona at campus. Although throughout 9th grade, I did some things that I definitely was not very proud of. I still kept all of my friends in relations from middle school, and one of those was with a girl I'm going to refer to as Kaori. Her and I had been dating off and on for a while, but we managed to finally solidify our relationship together. It made me really happy, and it was at this that I was probably the happiest I ever was in a relationship with somebody. However, when high school came around, I met a girl that I'll refer to as Emma. Emma was someone I enjoyed talking to a lot, and me with my 9th grade brain mistook this for romantic feelings. I then made probably one of the biggest mistakes I have ever made, and I broke up with Kaori with the intention of dating Emma. But I felt so much guilt about hurting Kaori that I never went through with dating Emma, and that ended up resulting in me hurting 2 girls. This was something that, at the time, really did destroy my mental, and that persona of Blazewalker became my everything because I hated who I was for a very long time because of these initial actions. This persona was a lot like Okabe's Hoen Kyoma personality, where I used to mask myself as someone that was always happy. In reality though, it was just a way to cope with the immense amount of guilt that I felt on the daily. After some time, school came to a close as summer crept in. I met up with my 3 best buds, Logan, Mamadou, and Gage, and we had a blast all summer, but my regret never really completely left me. A few months later, school started up again. 10th grade started off nicely, and me and Emma reconciled our friendship with one another. Things seemed optimistic again, and I hoped to one day make it up to Kaori somehow. My friend, who was known as Gavin at this point in time, started dating a girl. After a week of them being together, he would introduce me to that girl that I'm going to refer to as Mirai. She seemed really nice, and I was excited to get to know her. But I had no idea that I was about to start the hardest chapter of my life. Things between Gavin and Mirai obviously were not working out, as it was very clear she did not want to be with him anymore. I have a really bad tendency of doing whatever I can to help people or getting involved in situations I definitely should not be in. And I saw how upset she was one day and I decided to reach out to her. She expressed to me that she wanted to break up with him, but didn't know how to do it or if she could. I talked to her for a few hours that night, and she finally built up the courage to do it though. Mirai broke up with Gavin the next day. After their breakup, Mirai and I started to become very close. People around campus often mistook us for a couple, and that thought made me extremely uncomfortable, so I would tell them that I thought of Mirai as family. One night, Mirai said that maybe we should buckle down and become an actual couple, and I told her I couldn't do that. I told her about what happened with Kaori, and that I was waiting for her to forgive me so I could make her happy again one day. To my surprise, Mirai's response was a story of her entire life. I now know that she would often do this to manipulate people to become very close with her, or doing what she wanted them to do. But naturally at the time, I had no clue that's what she was doing. She told me her parents had a messy divorce which led her to move down to Florida, and that led to her mother picking up drugs and getting a bad boyfriend, one that abused the kids and inevitably got her and her brother taken away from her mom. Mirai now was in foster care, and she told me that she had a history of attempted suicides. I was shocked that she had gone through so much. And because of my helping nature, I now felt extremely responsible for her after she told me all of this. Weirdly enough though, she got a boyfriend the very next day anyways. I'll call him Matt. Over the weeks, the guilt I felt from basically rejecting her grew immensely, and I didn't want to hurt another girl, especially one that had been through so much in her life. So after a few weeks, I hesitantly confessed what I assumed to be feelings to her, and she proceeded to break up with her current boyfriend immediately for me. This was the start of 3 years worth of events. Naturally, I can't go completely into detail about all of it since it spanned over multiple years, but I'll do my best to hit key points that are going to be important for this video. Things sailed smoothly for the first month, but that changed very quickly as the second month came around. Mirai grew increasingly more angsty and sporadic, and she often got into fights with her foster parents. One night, because of the fights, she got her phone taken away from her, and I had an old iPhone 5 laying around, so I gave it to her to use. She then proceeded to look through all of my old text messages and accused me of not really loving her or cheating on her that same night. This was the first really big red flag, but I ignored it because I didn't want to think I made the wrong decision. It was after this that things became rocky for a few months, but we trucked through a relationship anyways. I put a lot into making her happy, but it really never seemed like enough. One January afternoon, I planned something big for her, and I came into school the next morning to surprise her with it all. When we were delivered the news that our friend that I'm going to refer to as Druggy had taken his life the night before. This shook me to my core. It might sound silly, but up until this point, suicide did not seem like something that was actually real. I knew it existed, but I didn't know exactly how much of an impact it had on people until I saw a classroom full of my friends crying. Our friend's death seemed to have a very negative impact on Mirai, as she claimed to become suicidal. Looking back on it now, it was so obviously a ploy for attention, but you know, after just experiencing a death of a friend of yours, you will definitely believe a claim like that. To keep her from getting increasingly more suicidal, I gave her more attention than ever after this, and it was around this point I quit everything in my free time. I didn't play games anymore, I stopped watching anime, I stopped hanging out with my friends. It all disappeared to focus on her. She wanted to log into my Instagram account, so I let her, and she gave me permission to log into hers. You'd think I'd have learned over the last time she had something of mine, but I did not. She read through all of my messages, and she accused me of cheating on her with some of my best friends. She began threatening her life if I didn't block them, so naturally, I did. I blocked some of my closest friends that were girls. The last thing I wanted to do was upset Mirai further, so I did what I thought would make her happier. It was my fault that I blocked these people. Around a month had passed since Druggy's passing, and my relationship I knew was not healthy anymore. I started thinking of breaking up with her, and then one night I was approached by a friend of mine that was telling me that our friend Batman looked like he was going to take his life that night. Batman recently had a breakup with his girlfriend of 6 months, and he did not handle it well. I did all I could to talk him through his breakup, but I guess no matter how much we talked, it never really got completely through to him. I panicked as soon as I heard this news, and I immediately dialed 911. And I talked to 3 different police stations in our town and towns around us to get someone to go save him. Later that night, his ex-girlfriend texted me and told me he was okay, so I went to sleep relieved that night. That next day, I came into school with the intention of breaking up with Mirai and giving Batman a big hug when I was greeted with friends crying again. Batman had hung himself, and his ex-girlfriend didn't tell me the truth. I'm 19, so I haven't lived for super long, but this was the one point in my life that I mentally and emotionally lost it. After having blocked some of my friends and quitting gaming and quitting a lot of things in my free time, it was at this moment that everything that had been happening the last few months finally hit me, and I felt completely alone. Despite my original intentions to leave Mirai, I now felt as if she was the only one that I had. Because of my mental state though, after losing Batman, she didn't want to deal with me much and began to hang out with some other guys at school and started pushing me to the side. She would hug them and be very affectionate with them, while not giving me any attention at all. And naturally, I complained that it wasn't fair of her to make me block my friends that were girls, but she would get to cling to her friends that were guys. She didn't care. This is actually something she would proceed to do every month, meeting new guy friends and spending a lot of time with them. I wasn't allowed to have friends that were girls. I knew this was toxic, but I didn't care because after losing 2 friends and losing a bunch of my free time and blocking people, I couldn't lose her too. February was a long month that year. I don't even really know how I made it through it, but now I felt guilt for breaking 2 girls' hearts, and I felt the guilt of not being able to save somebody. A good portion of that year passed, and I had become extremely depressed. I still tried to do what I could to hold the Blazewalker facade on the outside, but it was draining. My 11th grade year rolled around, and I felt so empty being at a school that I once loved. A few days before our 1-year anniversary, Mirai texted me about dreams she had been having recently involving the boyfriend Matt that she left me for a long time ago. She said that she thought she still had feelings for him, which, naturally, I thought was absurd. She dated him for less than a month, and left him for me, and we had now been dating for a year at this point. I didn't understand where she was coming from at all, but I handled it as responsibly as I could. However, this started a very big growing fear in me about her leaving me. Our 1-year anniversary rolled around and I gave her a sapphire ring that I worked all summer to save up for. She gave me nothing. I felt a little bad, but it wasn't enough to get me overworked. She began to plan a Halloween party, and Matt was on the list for people to be invited. Matt and Mirai had been growing very close over the last few days actually, which made me really uncomfortable. I asked her not to invite him, and she proceeded to guilt trip me, saying that Matt was a friend of hers that she always wanted to be close to, and by denying her this right, I was denying her happiness. So, Matt was invited to the party despite what I wanted. She had been becoming extremely distant to me after our anniversary, and when the day her Halloween party came around, I got a gut feeling that I shouldn't go. I remember very distinctly, me and my parents were at a restaurant about 20 minutes from her place, and I told my parents that I didn't think that I should go because I felt something bad was going to happen. I should have trusted my gut, but I shook it off, and I went anyways. She then blew me off that entire night to hang out with Matt, and after I left the party that night, she broke up with me. I found out the next day that she had been cheating on me with him for about a week prior to the party. I was distraught at first, thinking I had lost the absolute most important person to me ever. But as that week progressed, people on campus came to me, and they told me how bad she had been talking about me to everybody. I mourned our breakup for a week and a half, but I decided to move past it now. I was finally free. I reconnected with old friends, I met back up with Kaori and finally began to make things up to her, and I began to pursue filmmaking. This was when my first film, Hard Knocks, was made. Things looked up for me. But Mirai kept contacting me and blaming me for people treating her differently on campus. I told her I didn't do anything at all, and that it was all her own doing. But she continued to blame me for everything. She would curse me out, she would insult me, and she would belittle me because she thought I was ruining her life. There was an instance where she told me that she should have said no when I confessed feelings to her. And even though a lot of our relationship might have been superficial, that still really hurt a lot. After about a month past our breakup, she left Matt and came back to me. Naturally, I turned her down a few times, not wanting to get back with her. But she began begging me on the daily, and calling me just for her to cry for a few hours about how she missed me. I didn't want to let go of the new life that I had, and I didn't want to leave Kaori again after finally fixing things with her. That was when she started to threaten her life, like she did 9 months prior when we lost Batman and Druggy. I couldn't handle this. After losing 2 friends and feeling so guilty for not saving one of them, I was not prepared to go through that again. And another one of my biggest regrets of my life, I left my new life behind, and I resumed a relationship with Mirai. Mirai this time around, despite her being the one who cheated, was much stricter. She would read and go through my phone on the daily. She would control who I talked to on social media, and she would get extremely upset when I went out of the house to go do anything. I had to stop actually nearly every activity outside of my house, and this time around she made me block out nearly all of my friends this time, no matter if they were a guy or a girl. After finally making things up to Kaori after 2 years, I had her blocked out of my life. Her and I would talk again occasionally in the near future, but things were never the same. Not a day goes by where I don't think about Kaori and how she's doing. I had to keep this relationship a secret from my parents because they didn't want me to go back with Mirai, and this began one of the worst years of my entire life. I don't want to sound edgy, but it was around this point that I think I forgot what happiness actually felt like. Even to this day, I still really don't have a grasp on when I'm truly happy anymore. I lost a way of life that made me happy. I lost my friends. I couldn't turn to my parents anymore. I was like a bird in a cage. The next few months were not easy. Life began to feel more like a chore than just something that happened naturally. I had to force myself to do things. There were some actions that took place that are probably best left unsaid. For the most part though, I don't really remember much from this time in my head, as these were times I tried to forget about. I didn't want to remember how I felt in those few months. A few more months go by, and we end up at a local convention called SwampCon in March of 2019. However, the first day, I got caught by my parents with her, so I wasn't allowed to come back the second day. But the second day is when Mirai met a guy that I'm going to refer to as Deku. Instantly, I recognized how she was treating him as the same way she was with Matt, and I tried to shut it down. But she instead forced me to become friends with Deku's friends, and I'm going to refer to them as Ronald and Ronald's brother Pat. I did what I could to try and keep Mirai away from them, but this resulted in her cheating on me with Pat. I broke up with her on the spot, and after this she got a crush on Deku, and then she ended up dating Ronald. So she cheated on me with Pat, she left Pat to get a crush on Deku, and then she left Deku after getting his hopes up and ended up dating Ronald. She single-handedly ripped that friend group apart, and she broke my heart for the second time. I tried to win her back at school a few times, but this led to her beating me, slapping me, and the day that was my last straw was when she repeatedly punched me in the nuts. I began to get bruises all over my body, and the school wouldn't do fucking anything about me being attacked because they said she's just an innocent girl. After being physically abused for 2 weeks, I decided to fucking slap her. I know this wasn't the right call, but she wouldn't listen to me when I asked her not to hit me, and after this, she never did hit me again. I didn't dwell on this incident for very long, as the only feeling I felt was anger for being cheated on twice now. I attempted once again to rebuild my old life. I reconnected with my old friends. I went on a beach trip with my good friends Mamadou, Gage, and Logan to re-solidify our relationships and patch things up, and I tried to figure out what happiness was again, because I wanted to be happy. It didn't take long before she broke up with Ronald, and once again, was begging for me back. That is when she began, once again, for the third time, to threaten her own life. I fell for it partially this time, deciding to be her friend, but not to date her. But for the most part, I learned over the last 2 years to not trust her, and I planned to not let the past repeat itself again. She would then harass me for the entire summer, and once school started up again, she stalked me almost every day at school. She would spread rumors about me, and she would send friends of hers to also harass and stalk me. I had multiple meetings with the school staff, the dean, the principal, the vice principal, teachers, and they decided that it was best to keep us apart from one another. But of course, this never stopped her, because she just got other people to do it for her. I could never focus on classes anymore. I mean, how could I? And my grades started to fall off. To cope with my school environment, in February of 2020, I began watching anime again for the first time in nearly 2 years. This was when I discovered Angel Beats, and I fell in love with anime again. I decided I finally had enough, and I blocked the majority of those people online. I then started dating someone that I had been talking to for a while now, and I tried to ignore what was happening at school. This, however, would make things hit an all-time peak, which I guess led to her lying to her family, and then they proceeded to threaten me on Facebook, and the school decided it would be best to get me out of there. Since Mirai directly wasn't the one who sent these messages and it didn't happen on campus, they told me there was nothing they could do. In February of 2020, the school gave me the Hope Scholarship to transfer to online classes. After leaving school, they continued to harass me online through other accounts and on various sites like Instagram, my old YouTube channel, and an app called Tell On Me. I ended up having to abandon my old YouTube channel, and I had to make my Instagram account private. I had a temporary restraining order on her because of her family's threats online, but it only lasted for about 15 days. I was told that if I wanted to make the restraining order official, I would have to pay money for it, like a good amount of it, and I'd have to go to a court case where Mirai was present. I could not bear the thought of seeing her again, so I told them no. After this, I started to go outside and hang out with friends as much as I possibly could to get my mind off of things, but this would not last for very long. The nation began closing down very rapidly, and something I'm sure you all are aware of now. A shutdown that was initially meant to be 2 weeks lasted a lot longer than anyone anticipated. With this virus, I lost my one way of coping, which was the ability to go outside and hang out with my friends. Sure, we could play games and such online, but it didn't feel the same. Not at all. I felt so immensely alone, and the online harassment started to affect me a lot more. The relationship I had too at that time, which ended up being very beneficial to me, became harder and harder to keep together since we could never see each other. Anime became my only way of coping with things. I would binge shows all the time, and I would find myself gaming most of the time too. Quarantine made me realize that I had a severe lack of purpose, and my depression began to grow immensely again for the first time in a while. That was when on one fateful day in June of 2020, I would stumble into the intro of a show called Steins Gate on YouTube. The opening, called Hacking to the Gate, was extremely catchy, and the visuals were really pretty, so I was intrigued. Later that day, on June 8th, I purchased a Funimation subscription, and I began watching the first episode of Steins Gate. The first episode of Steins Gate captured me immediately. Okabe's speech about God's final warning with the trippy visuals and the ticking of a clock in the background were both an excellent hook and a bit prophetic as well. The mention of John Titor is also an interesting one, as this anime has a lot of inspiration from real-life acclaimed time travelers. John Titor was an actual person that went on forums in the early days of the internet, and he warned people about a future world war. He also mentioned he came back for the IBM 5100 and talked about some secret uses of it, like a various amount of languages it could use, which all turned out to be true. There's also mention of CERN, which is a real corporation that does in fact make some very interesting things in this thing called the LHC. Everything in the rest of the episode sets up the rest of the plot and the loop perfectly, with Kurisu saying Okabe tried to talk to her and the time machine landing on the roof. We also get introduced to Okabe's shenanigans as Hyoin Kyoma. I will never forget the moment that Okabe sent the text to Daru, and he traveled from the Beta World line to the Alpha World line. That scene, when I first saw it, shocked me. And then upon him later finding out that Kurisu was alive again, I was invested. I needed to find out how Kurisu died, why did everyone disappear, what was with all the imagery on the screen, why Okabe's message was sent into a few separate messages. I had so many questions, so I began casually watching it. The questions just began to rack up and rank up for me. We watch as Okabe teleports a banana back in time, making it a gel nana, and discovering that he can send emails to himself back in time. Weirdly enough, he's the only one that seems to remember things. We find out about there being an actual threat, and that Okabe's role-playing of there being an organization might actually be right. They fiddle with time a lot, which leads to Rukiko becoming an actual girl, the IBM disappearing, and the entirety of the city changing in one of the most goosebumps-inducing scenes that is Episode 9's ending. Despite all of my questions though, I became very quickly engaged in the character interactions. Okabe is a character that at first I actually really did not like. I didn't like how he seemed to avoid telling people how he really felt or the thoughts actually going on in his head. I found him a bit annoying. I thought his poses were really stupid. I didn't appreciate how he seemed to mask everything in his life with his Hyoin Kyoma personality. But then it clicked with me. I was looking at a character a lot like me. Someone that was afraid to tell the people around him majority of what was actually going on in their head, who had very high ambitions for himself and the world around him. And Okabe's Kyoma persona was like my Blazewalker persona. I even gave stupid nicknames to people and places all the time. So when I was starting Steins Gate, I hated myself. And I realized I didn't like Okabe because I didn't like me. Hyoin Kyoma is almost like a defense mechanism of Okabe's. He uses it to mask situations he would normally be uncomfortable in. Like in the first episode when he meets Kurisu. Once he recognizes her, he dives into the persona, and he gets flustered when she finds out he isn't talking to anybody on his phone. He grows even more flustered and he runs away, clearly very panicked. Kyoma is Okabe's way of dealing with the outside world, and his way of trying to mask the kind-hearted person he is. It's also his way of dealing with social anxiety, as he uses Kyoma to deal with situations he would not normally know how to. You could say that this persona is an extreme social mask, which is something unfortunately very common in today's society, as a lot of people are afraid to be who they are. The Blazewalker persona I had in high school was always trying to make jokes, and he always was smiling. He tried his best to be someone he was not, so he would be accepted by the people around him. But this led to him being closed off with his feelings and keeping himself from getting close with other people. He always wanted to be seen as a jokester, and somebody that was always happy. This, down the line, led me to go a lot easier on him. A character I originally disliked, I came to relate to more and more. I enjoyed his sarcasm, his witty and meta conversations with the rest of the cast, and how absolutely nobody took Kyoma seriously. Watching each of these characters interact with each other was actually extremely refreshing. Mayuri's kind-heartedness, but secret intelligence, Kurisu's sarcasm and tsundere attitude, Daru's otaku tendencies and his weird love for Ferris, Moika's texting spam and atmosphere of mystery, Ferris going along with Okabe's role-playing, and Rukako but he's a dude. Every interaction felt so enjoyable to watch. One of the main complaints I see for Steins Gate is the start being too slow, but to me this was not a complaint at all. The start of Steins Gate was everything I needed at that point in time. As silly as it might sound, my feelings of immense loneliness began to vanish, as in the first 12 episodes of Steins Gate, I felt so included with them. I felt as if I was a lab member, and I was just hanging with some friends, cracking jokes and enjoying myself. That's when it occurred to me that Steins Gate's beginning was everything I felt robbed of due to Mirai. With Mirai, I lost friends, and I felt like I had no one. I felt like I lost all of my freedoms. I felt very alone. That only worsened with time and with quarantine. Even though I had friends around me, I still never felt like I had people in my life. Steins Gate made me finally feel like I was getting back the things I had given up for her, and I really liked it. On top of this, despite being in the middle of a pandemic and knowing I couldn't see any of my friends, I started to not feel as alone anymore. I fell so in love with the cast that I became so excited to watch next episodes to see them interact with each other. But my love for them is what made episode 12 all the much harder. Episode 12 is very different. Most of the episodes for Steins Gate to this point start off very lighthearted, but this one has an immediate change in atmosphere. It's really similar to episode 15 of ReZero, in that way that there is an immediate noticeable tone shift. We start off with Okabe talking to Mayuri in a desert wasteland, supposedly 70 million years in the past. Mayuri tells him that he came in here from a time machine, and says that they are just one of the many versions of themselves. But you could also say that they were the originals. She tells Okabe that they are likely going to die, and she says that their wills will carry on to the versions of themselves in Akihabara 70 million years in the future. This is a nightmare of his, but it's caused likely because of the canonical ending for Steins Gate Zero. In Zero, Okabe travels back 70 million years via time machine into his past and disappears beyond the event horizon. He's searching for Mayuri because she finished her mission and was lost in time due to the time machine's low fuel. He manages to find her, but he cannot travel forward in time due to him possibly overlapping or erasing the Steins Gate Worldline version of himself. That is what leads to him dying, and Steins Gate shows us many times that Mayuri remembers things through nightmares very often, like her deaths and other loops. This is likely why this was shown to Okabe in a nightmare, but of course this is just speculation. Due to Okabe's dream, he's extremely hesitant to test out their now finished Time Lead machine, which is a device that is meant to send back memories in time. He surprises everyone when he decides he wants to go public with their findings instead, and it's expressed later on how relieved everyone is by his decision. This is the first episode Kurisu and Okabe have a long talk about things, and the first time Okabe expresses genuine, wholesome appreciation for her. They come back and party a little bit later, and there is some eerie foreshadowing with the hourglass stopping. Mayuri tells Okabe that with all these new lab members, maybe she doesn't need to be around anymore. But before he can respond, all of the trains in town shut down due to a bomb threat. Suzuha basically confirms to the entire audience that she's from the future, as she panics upon finding out that the lab is connected directly with CERN, and she goes to suggest that they all need to leave. But since she's from the future, she's aware of worldwide convergence, so she knows that the events that should play out next will always play out that way. She then books it, and an ominous soundtrack with Okabe's heartbeat overlapping begins to play as he finds the stopped hourglass. And then Mayuri's watch stops. This line would become infamous in the series, and it's upon her saying this Okabe realizes something horrible is about to happen. The place is then raided by CERN's rounders. Moika was a plug from CERN this entire time. Moika says the CERN will take Daru, Okabe, and Kurisu, but deems Mayuri unnecessary. In a scene that made my heart completely stop, as Okabe begs for Moikawa to stop, she shoots Mayuri in the head. This one moment, changed everything. An anime that was originally a slice of life with sci-fi elements going on and hints of mystery in the background exploded in one single scene. Because of my extreme attachment to the characters, there was no way I could stop watching right there. I proceeded to pull my first anime all-nighter, and I spent that night watching every single episode left of the show. There's a very famous quote that you've probably heard a million times by now, which is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. For the next few episodes, we as an audience would watch Okabe begin to break. I watched Okabe try over and over again to save Mayuri, but he couldn't save her. Whether it be due to gunshots or being accidentally pushed in front of a train or anything, she always died. Watching Okabe's mental crumble before my eyes as he attempted to save his childhood friend really made me reflect on my futile attempts to try and save some of my friends in the past. And it was at this moment I became a massive supporter of Okabe. I couldn't succeed in doing what we both tried to do, so I wanted with all of my heart to see him succeed. I wanted Okabe to win. I wanted nothing more than to see him save Mayuri. He would try over and over again to save her, slowly melding into the definition of insanity. He tried over and over and over, but each time it resulted in failure. A man that hid inside of a persona that was so strong and so ambitious became who he really was, as Okabe Rintaro began to show his true colors. He was desperate to save her, willing to do anything actually. There were multiple occasions where after his attempts, he would just break down in tears. Okabe began to severely break. He was shown a glimmer of hope through Suzuha as she revealed she is John Titor, and they help her fix her time machine. This is when Daru, who was someone usually seen as a dick and a pervert, began to shine as a character. We got to see Daru as a very caring friend, willing to help those around him as much as he could. Although there were many complaints, even upon finding out that Suzuha was his daughter, he kept us cool. Daru is a character that gets a lot of shit, and people say he doesn't change at all. But we see how good of a guy Daru is here, and how much of a good guy Daru will always become in any timeline, since he always ends up having Suzuha. But even after finishing Suzuha's time machine, World Line Convergence kicks in, and Suzuha fails her mission. After finally thinking there was a way out, the scene of her apologizing is heartbreaking. You feel with Okabe in this moment that no matter how many times he tries, or what he does, maybe he is always destined to fail. Okabe falls more and is near giving up when he comes to the realization that the only way he can save Mayuri is by undoing past demails that led him to this point, and by making sacrifices. In a way that is so painfully human, he begins to neglect those around him as he tries to run toward his goal of saving Mayuri. He sacrifices a reality that Ferris is happy in, where her dad lives. He sacrifices the reality that Moeka grew closer to FB by bringing the IBM to him, finally getting to please the only important person to her. And he sacrifices a reality where Ruka finally became a girl, something to remove his insecurities and to finally feel he can accept who he is, and one where he also can pursue his feelings for Okabe. Okabe even begins to neglect Mayuri ironically enough, since he is so focused on saving her, he doesn't spend time with her anymore. It's at this point that he realizes to go back to the Beta World line where Mayuri will live, he needs to undo his demail that brought him to the Alpha World line. This means, in order for Mayuri to live, he's gonna have to go back to a world where Kurisu dies. Kurisu is a character Okabe ended up growing extremely close to since he came to the Alpha World line. No matter how many times Okabe did a time leap, he would always be able to rely and confide in Kurisu. She was the first person Okabe was able to talk to about anything, and it was with her he was clearly the most comfortable. They even shared a lot in common, and she made his signature pose for him. It's very obvious that he was growing feelings for her, and she probably felt the same way. Kurisu is a character that helped me realize that I don't think I had ever really felt comfortable in a relationship before, or at least as happy as I could be, as I never felt I could openly talk with someone about anything. Kaori was the closest I had gotten, but I had not gotten all the way there yet. Again, at this moment, I was currently in a relationship that I got into after blocking Mirai everywhere, but I realized that this relationship was not what I wanted. I wanted someone that would be able to help me through my mistakes, and someone who would always be able to welcome me with open arms. A person that I could talk to about everything with, and one that would share my interest and make goofy poses with me. I realized that I wanted someone like Makase Kurisu in my life, and I ended that relationship I had been in up in that point. That person and I are still very good friends to this day, thankfully. However, I still have not found my Kurisu. I know she's out there somewhere though. Anyway, as the date for Mayuri's death grew closer, Okabe realizes that now he had to decide who would die, Kurisu or Mayuri. Kurisu helps him make the decision, and they share one of the most heartbreaking scenes I have ever seen as they express their love for each other and say their goodbyes. I spent the entirety of the scene just bawling my eyes out, literally just crying nonstop. The voice acting here was on point. The quotes that came out are extremely bittersweet. It is just a very depressing scene. After this, Okabe begins his travel back to the Beta World line as Kurisu comes bursting in, running to tell Okabe that she loves him, but before she can say it, he goes back to the Beta World line. With a shaky voice, he announces his victory and says goodbye to the phone microwave and the IBM. Okabe managed to win and to save Mayuri, but at the cost of many people's happiness and his own happiness. His mission had come to a close. I was both very happy for him, but also really sad because who knew if he would ever truly be happy again. I paused as the credits started to roll, and I took a break from watching for a little bit because after episode 22, I really was crying my eyes out. I came back a little later though to watch through the credits of episode 22, and to my surprise, Suzuha comes back and asks Okabe to stop World War III. This audibly made me go, what the fuck? Seeing as we only had 2 episodes left. But regardless, I was on board, and I was ready to keep watching. Suzuha needs Okabe to save the future from CERN, and to avoid making World War III happen. But to do this, Okabe needs to use a time machine again. He says that out of respect for Kurisu and other sacrifices, he will not use a time machine. But then Suzuha tells him that to stop World War III, he needs to go back in time to save Kurisu. Once they do this, they will go to a world free of world line convergence known as Steins Gate. Okabe decides to go back in time, but because he wants to save Kurisu. The incredibly irony of this though is that he is the one that stabs Kurisu. His first time around, he doesn't save her. Suzuha tries to tell Okabe to keep going, but he tells her that she doesn't know just how many times he's failed. Okabe says he knew it would end this way, and that he's tired. These lines from him resonated with me to my core. Over the last 4 years, all I had felt like I had done was fail. I failed my friends and the people around me. I failed Kaori and school and my parents. I felt like all I had done was fail. That's why when Mayuri slaps him, it was a wake-up call to me too. She tells Okabe that he isn't the type of person to give up halfway through, and that he never gives up, period. He had helped her through a lot in her life, so she didn't want to see him give up now. Mayuri telling this to Okabe is when I came to the massive realization how important the friends I had were to me. They were always there for me, and they always knew that I wouldn't give up. One of my friends made a joke to me in high school. He told me, I haven't subscribed to your channel, but I have subscribed to your inspiration. Just like Okabe, I was also known for not giving up. It was at this moment that any remaining piece of loneliness I had felt inside of me washed away, and I felt incredibly loved. Mayuri helped me realize just how much my friends truly cared about me, and that they had always been there for me, no matter how much I fucked up. Then, Okabe got a message from his future self. He told himself he could save Kurisu by deceiving the world, and this motivated him to try again. Oddly enough, this gave me motivation in a weird sense. I could look back at my past self so easily through my old YouTube videos, and I could feel how sad I was in a lot of those videos. It's really easy to notice where there were distinguishable changes in my attitude. The me from back then wanted me to succeed at YouTube, and wanted me to be happy. He wouldn't want me to still be thinking about past events, and to be sad. In a way, I used my past self to deceive my current self. Okabe helped me learn to be who the past me always wanted me to be. Okabe then travels back in time, and this time everything that is set up and established throughout the entire show is used. Okabe with full confidence does everything he needs to, such as getting the metal Upa, telling Kurisu he is there to save her, and setting up a way for the time travel files to be burnt up. However, he finds out that the fake blood in the lightsaber is dried up, so he realizes he'll need to use his blood. He has Kurisu's father stab him. He then tases Kurisu and rips open his stomach to make more blood while making the necessary scream that he heard in the first episode. With this, Okabe travels back to the future into the Steins Gate world line. Okabe 1. Okabe gives out lab member badges to everyone, and he has an unexpected reunion with Kurisu. Even though the world line is different, she still remembers Okabe because of what they shared for one another. Steins Gate was an anime that came into my life randomly, and in the most unexpected way possible. The cast instantly made me feel at home, giving me everything that I felt I had lost because of Mirai. The show then proceeded to redefine my life and make me realize so many things in even more unexpected ways. Okabe has made me learn a lot about myself. I'm not some person that needs to hold a persona and run from things in life. I'm a human being. I shouldn't hold things in all the time and appear as someone that is just ambitious. Just like Okabe, I came to appreciate myself and how human I am, and I've started to open up more about things with other people. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm way better than I was before seeing Steins Gate. Okabe also has become what I want to be, and that is someone who always will push forward with sheer determination. I want to be able to push through anything like he can. Kurisu is a character that left a big impact on me that was really needed after what happened with Kaori, Emma, and Mirai. She helped me realize exactly what I need in a partner. Someone that is compassionate and who will always support me. No matter how much I mess up, they will always be there for me with open arms. I need someone who will genuinely care about me and love me unconditionally, no matter what events transpire in time. Mayuri and the other lab members made me realize how many amazing people I have in my life. When things are going rough in life, and you feel like you're living the same thing over and over again, and you feel like you failed a dozen times, it's so easy to lose sight of things, and to only focus on one wish of yours. All it takes is one metaphorical slap to the face to bring you back to reality, and realize you have people in your life that will never give up on you. No one is ever truly alone. They only think that they are. No matter what world line you are on, there will always be someone there for you. Just like how Okabe spoke to his past self to save Kurisu, my past self spoke to the present me in ways I can't exactly do justice explaining. I used to dwell in the past, sometimes even living in it. I thought about things I did, mistakes I made, and failures constantly. It was definitely not healthy. Okabe helped me realize that the past should not be messed with, which means I should take what I learned from it and I should move on. I should not live in the past. The old me went through a lot, especially all the things with Mirai. But just like Kurisu, I would not change any of what happened because those are my memories. They made me what I am today. I have forgiven myself for many of those actions in the past. Some things I still think about often, like Kaori, but I do my best to not make it my entire world. I've taken what has happened and I've learned what I need for the betterment of my life. For my old self, I will move forward and become the best me I can become, because for a while, I felt very lost. And like I didn't know what I was doing. Now, I think I know what I'm doing. I could go on and on, gushing about the direction, the cinematography, the score, anything and everything. I truly love everything about Steins Gate with all of my heart. It was thanks to the show that I decided to reignite my passions and to chase my dreams again. Shortly after watching it, I began writing scripts for videos and watching lots of anime to talk about. It would be a few months, but I would gain the confidence to post my first new video, and one that I was truly happy about making in years. Since then, a community has appeared before me of currently 5,000 people that I could not be more thankful for. I have no idea what I did to deserve the success, but I could not be more grateful that it's here. I don't know what exactly the future holds for me at all, in all honesty. But for the first time in a very long time, I'm excited for tomorrow as each day passes. I think I've made it to the right world line, and although I don't think I know exactly what happiness is yet, I think I'm on the right path to my achievement point, my Steins Gate. Thank you for watching, and thank you guys so much for 5,000 subscribers. El Sai Congro. I'd like to give a special thank you to my patrons, Matt and Fygar, for helping me review this script and for supporting me. And you guys mean a lot to me. Thank you so much.